What up, fam? Welcome back to the business of DJing. Thank you again for tuning in. My name is Jamie Selects, your host. All right, today we have a super awesome episode. I'm excited to bring on my best friend in the world, Alán Hensley, aka Soul7. Not only is he a dope DJ, but he works in the music industry and is an absolute beast at his job. So we have a super wide-ranging conversation today, which I'm excited to share with you. He has a master's in music business from the Berkeley College of Music, and we go back all the way to our days at Pacific, where we both graduated with bachelor's degrees in business with concentrations in arts and entertainment, which is basically music business. So his knowledge in that area is super profound, and so excited to share that with you. Today we talk about everything from how he got gigs while he was out in Spain studying abroad, all the way to how he built EMPIRE Latino from the ground up. EMPIRE is a record label from the Bay Area, if you're not familiar, where he's a senior product manager of Latin and also hip-hop. And then also he gives some tips to young artists who may be looking to get their first in with the label. And then also just for DJs out there, how you can maintain a professional image online and how you can help brand yourself. So super wide-ranging conversation. Thanks again to my boy Soul7 for coming on, and I'm excited to bring him to you right now. Let's go. Cool. What up? Welcome to another episode of the Business of DJing. It's your boy Jamie Selects, your host. Thank you for tuning in today. We have a very special guest, my brother, my best friend, Soul7, Alán Hensley. Thank you so much for coming on, bro.
What's up, man? What's up?
Cool. Well, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Super stoked. A couple of things that I want to talk about. We're going to talk about the early Getdown days, feeling stuck and taking a leap of faith, your experience at Berkeley College of Music, and then coming back, getting a real job that you don't really like, and then the transition over to working in the music industry at EMPIRE. And then anything else that comes up. So let's just flow. But thanks again for
Let's rock it.
Coming on.
No, thanks for having me.
Cool. So let's take it back to kind of early days. We both met in college, just in case the audience isn't aware. But why don't you talk about where you're first introduced to your love of music, and then potentially your first intro to DJing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think most human beings. We got a guest appearance here. I think most human beings probably have pretty early recollection of their love for music. I think my earliest one was definitely when I first moved to the United States. Me and my brother got this cool little electronic keyboard when I lived in Modesto in an apartment, and their keyboard could like record those short tidbits of whatever you played or even sound bites. And we would just rock out trying to make a song for my mom before she got home in our closet. That's probably my earliest memory of music in my life, that I was really into it. But I think when I really fell in love with it was probably in elementary school. I had a best friend who was super into music. You know, he introduced me to Linkin Park. He introduced me to Blink-182. And it was honestly through that best friend that I kind of fell in love with music as a whole, especially Linkin Park. You know, just because of that experience, they're now my favorite band. I do remember one particular time where it really clicked that I just had to know more about music. I went to I think it was third grade or second grade, maybe even fourth grade, can't even remember. But one of my best friends, she was having a birthday party. And we went to her birthday party at her dad's house in Sacramento, and her dad was super, for the lack of a better word, traditional straight edge kind of. And he worked in pop music. He was a vocal coach, and it was gospel and pop music. And I remember at her party, we were all in the garage, you know, everyone's having a good time. And then my friend Drew, the one who introduced me to Linkin Park and everything, he actually brought in his own CD and he played Linkin Park Hybrid Theory. He put it on the thing. And if y'all know, the first song on that album is Paper Cut. It's a pretty hardcore, low-key screamo song. And I heard that and it just instantly captivated me. And her dad came rushing in and turned it off. And he's like, yo, we don't listen to this. This is devil's music. And I just remember being like, what was that? I need to listen to that. That's probably the earliest I remember just really being captured by music.
I have a good Linkin Park moment in the car with my dad as well. Okay, cool. So then you, how did you end up finding? So for the audience, we both went to University of Pacific together, studied music business, or arts and entertainment concentration at Pacific. Do you remember how you found that program and what made you want to go to Pacific to study music business?
Yeah, I mean, I think then I wasn't sure if music business was exactly where I wanted to go. I know there was always an interest for me. Um, in high school, my parents got me a computer that had GarageBand, and so I was starting to already mess around with beats and stuff. And I knew that was a really cool place to look into. I also that was around the time MTV3 got launched, and so like then I didn't have cable TV, and all we did was terrestrial. And so like I got that channel at my parents' house, and I was really kind of interested. I'm like, holy shit, there's like a whole business behind music. I didn't even know this was a thing. And then the more I researched about music, and I learned that you can actually make a career of it. And University of the Pacific was one of the few schools on the West Coast that actually had a music business program. Like I wanted to work in business, and the fact that they had a music business program kind of made me lean towards there. It wasn't my top school. I'm be straight up. Actually, believe it or not, it was the second to. It was only one of two schools that accepted me. So
Very honest for the pod here.
yeah, very honest for the pod. And
Humble beginnings.
And I was like, okay, well, this is really cool. I knew I was going to go for business, so I did it. And then, eventually, when I went to orientation, I got introduced to some people in the music business program. Phil, remember Phil? He was him in our orientation, and he told us about the music business program. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't even know it was like that comprehensive. And so that's kind of really how I started to pursue that aspect of it at UOP. And that's kind of how I ended up at UOP. Wasn't probably my top choice. It was one of my choices. It was either between UOP or UC Merced. And Merced was brand spanking new, and there was nothing there. So I wasn't about to go to the middle of nowhere. So UOP ended up being the move.
Yeah, I feel you. It was not my top school either, but I remember just my dad was in music and seeing that they had a music business program. I kind of thought the same thing, went through the same process of like, oh, I could be in music, but also be on the business side and kind of combine both of my interests there. Okay, cool. So we're both at Pacific. We joined the same fraternity. We end up in the same job, the arts and entertainment team. And then, if I recall correctly, you became the music bro in the fraternity as well. And where was the first time that you decided to get a DJ controller? When we're in college together.
It was kind of like twofold, because so we were in Sigma Chi for the listeners to this. We were in Sigma Chi, and in Sigma Chi they had every brother had essentially like a title, so like they were in charge of something. One of the bros that brought me in his name was Kaku, DJ Kaku, actually, he's a pretty prominent DJ in Asia now. He was the music bro, and then he eventually formed that to be the DJ bro. So he was in charge of bringing the music to every party and like making the playlist and everything like that. He kind of took me under his wing and showed me kind of some stuff about DJing, but it was compounded with the job we had, which is the arts and entertainment program. When I think it was our sophomore year, we were doing the freshman orientation, and remember Arlene, who was then our boss at the time, her husband worked at Apple. He introduced us to this brand new program that Apple was working in conjunction with this company called Algorithm that put out. It's called DJ. It made DJing, mixing tracks, really simple and virtual on a computer without needing a controller. So I got really into that, and I thought it was really cool. And then I got that program from him and started kind of messing with it. And I learned it had a DJ controller that matched up with it. It's called the Vestack Spin, which is why I was taking the roll back. And that Vestack Spin, I ended up getting that. I think I got it for Christmas, and that really kind of like fully opened the door to the DJ world for me. And that was probably around, so that would have been middle of sophomore year. So I was 19 going on 20.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I remember DJing one of the freshman orientations. This was like long before I DJ'd. I just was playing tunes on Spotify. This one girl comes up to me. She's like, "Oh, you're a really good DJ." And I was like, "No, you are wrong about that. Times have changed." Okay, cool.
DJ press play.
That's kind of the intro there. What I really want to get into is post graduation. Before I kind of got involved with Plural Music, the Plural Music's the team that we used to book for college, and you see where Alán wearing the shirt right there if you're watching on the video.
Throwback logo.
Our company now. They put on these events called the Getdowns. So can you describe what the Getdowns were and kind of what the team vibe was at the time and the whole vision behind what what they were trying to build at the time in Stockton?
Yeah, so you kind of got to go back a little bit to get to the flow music, but I'll make it real quick. So throughout college, ended up getting really into DJing, became the DJ bro for our fraternity. So I was DJing parties and stuff, and I was doing it very much as a hobby at that time, by no means taking it seriously. And I did have like a little residency at like a super small club in Stockton called 856. Wasn't very cool, hardly ever pop in, but it was still a good introduction to it. And it was weird because at this club I couldn't play hip hop, and that at the time that's what I knew best. I barely knew anything about dance music, and I really wasn't into that pop. I was super hip hop head, and I couldn't play hip hop there. So I started getting introduced to like, I don't know, funk, some electronic shit, like Bob Sinclair. It's kind of one of my first intros to dance music, and this will come relevant here. Trust. Anyways, thanks for that, Roxy. Anyways, doing that throughout my college career, graduate. And once after I graduate, I didn't immediately pursue music business. At the time, I had like a lot of people talking in my ear, and my brother kind of convinced me that it was going to be kind of a waste of money and time. It's hard to make it in music. So I'm like, dude, you're right. Let me just try and get into digital marketing. I got a digital marketing job for not a very fun company. And I was doing that for a while. What ended up happening was around the middle of 2013 summer, some acquaintances from UOP, our homies now, with some of my best friends, Marcellus and Joe Q, they had hit me up because they were going to throw this like little party in this abandoned parking lot that they found in downtown Stockton. And they wanted to know if I DJ. They knew I DJ'd and they needed some more local people. And they're like, yeah, sure. So essentially the whole premise of this party was they were getting sick and tired of all the clubs in Stockton at the time did not support hip hop. They didn't want people spinning hip hop. They thought it brought a lot of problems, a lot of passive aggressive undertones with that. And, we kind of just got sick of being told what to play. So they ended up wanting to throw this party so we can spin whatever we want. So I pulled up to this party, and it ends up being pretty successful. It being our first party ever. I think like 100 people came through to like this abandoned garage. And at that point, we're like, yo, this is pretty dope. And we ended up, wanting to do it again. And that's kind of the premise of what Flow Music ended up becoming with these events. Was we called that one the Summer Getdown. And we were allowed to play whatever we want. Every DJ brought their own flavor, and it was really cool because we never were able to do that. And so by the time the next month came in, we're like, dude, let's do that again. That was so much fun. So we did Summer Getdown 2. And then at that point, even more people came. I think like 150, 200 people came to that one. And then we're like, we're on to something. And at that point, we decided to start this series of events called the Getdowns. And it really culminated with the third one we did, which is this Halloween one we did in downtown Stockton. We rented out this abandoned bank parking lot. And we put up these fences, built a little stage. Our homie who worked at Red Bull got us to have the Red Bull truck come out. And that was like kind of like the main stage piece. And the fire marshal gave us 500 capacity at the space he had put together.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of that night, the line was out the door. I think our estimate was like 750 people must have been coming through on that party. And that's when we were like, oh snap, we might be onto something. And at that point, we sat down, we rebranded everything, we packaged it up, and we created the Getdown, the logo and everything, and created this series where we were kind of made this concept of it's DJ based concert, but the DJs were bringing in live performers to perform with them. So it would be like a DJ and a drummer, DJ and a guitar player, DJ and a saxophone, DJ and a vocalist. It was kind of like that. And that's really kind of how it started. That following summer, the beginning of that year, we ended up doing a series at the Empire Theater in Stockton where we had I would call it a residency. We had 3 events we did in a row for the Getdowns. And that really kind of spurred our event production chops, really. And I think it was probably, around the 4th one where we did in Santa Rosa, where you kind of came in. And since then, it kind of like our collective minds kind of like really blossomed this whole idea.
Yeah, the Rose Town Getdown. Yeah, so let's touch on the branding part for a second and see what we can tease out for DJs trying to put on their own event. So can you go a little bit deeper into, okay, so we did the first event, it went pretty well. we did another event. Okay, we might be onto something. And then boom, we get to the groups from Getdown, have like 800 people there. Like, how did you wrap this all, especially being from the digital marketing side? I know you were pretty heavily involved in that. What was the marketing process like, and how did the meetings go in terms of like, okay, how are we going to package this event and how are we going to brand it, and like market it to people coming?
I mean, I think when you're creating a business, especially a brand that's going to be marketed to a new area, it's important to understand where your marketplace fit is, right? For us, we had quickly identified that there was a lack of these type of events happening in Stockton, California. At that time, the only place you could really go to music events was full-on blown concerts at like at the Bob Hope Theater, or small club events. And at the club events, as I mentioned to you, they weren't letting people play hip hop then. They were scared that things were going to get too rowdy and whatever. And so we had identified like, oh, there's a demand here. And so from that demand, from doing the first two events, we kind of like realized, okay, so we know we're going to do DJ based events. And by the Halloween one, we knew we wanted to include some live acts from around the area. And so from that point, we kind of like started to identify our marketplace fit. It's like, okay, we're going to be a live event that's not too big, it's affordable, but it's letting DJs play whatever they want. It's not super genre specific. It's just dance music, not in the sense of electronic music, but music that makes you dance. And from that point, we knew what we wanted to do. Now, a lot of us came from a business background, so we knew we had to do a lot more than just, hey, this party's happening and just do word of mouth. Because really, up until that point, most of this had been word of mouth. And this was also at the same time that we were about to get really into social media as a society. Like Instagram had just rolled out, Snapchat was just starting, Facebook was kind of the name of the game at the moment. And we knew we needed to start building the brand out. Yeah, Facebook events, for real.
Those were the shit back in the day.
And we quickly identified, okay, we need a brand that's recognizable. Well, we knew that the summer Getdowns had already had recognition because people started asking us, like, when are we gonna have the next one? So we knew the Getdown name was something we want to roll with. And then, I mean, we also paired up with this local digital marketing agency called Frankenmuffin that also helped us kind of like get our brand identity whittled down. And we also created a brand page. So created an Instagram for the company, and we created a Facebook for the company and started sharing content on there that helped people understand what is the Getdowns. So first thing we did was we identified our market fit. The second thing is we identified the tools we needed to create to start putting out the marketing. And then we also needed to identify what is the brand in terms of like, what is the about me of the brand. So we talked about it being like DJ based concerts where all genres are welcome and people are able to come and dance for a very competitive and like very inexpensive fee, entrance fee. And so that really became our brand, and we came up with the Getdowns name. Now, when we started marketing the third event that really kind of took it to the next level. Up until then, we were just doing posts on our social media, just getting the word of mouth out, making a Facebook event. That was the first time we tried doing paid media. So then paid media wasn't really built out yet on Facebook. They hadn't got into like super analytical targeting anything. But what did was YouTube. So what really crushed it for us was we did a YouTube campaign. We had created like this really fun trailer with some of our homies from college. That was the third event we did was a Halloween event. So we called it the Gruesome Getdown, and we created this like kind of like scary type trailer. And we had our friends doing that, and we used that as like the content piece to push the narrative of this event, of what it was going to be, what it was going to look like. And when we took that trailer we made, and then we ran ads using that only in Stockton. Ads then were kind of expensive, so we ended up dropping, I think it was like $250, and that ad went crazy because at the time people weren't really doing this yet on YouTube. That ad went crazy, and it actually kind of got out of hand. That's actually how the Groups of Getdown party got out of hand. That YouTube ad got served to like everybody, because Stockton's not very big, so if you serve $250 worth in like a week of YouTube ads to Stockton, it's likely going to be served to a lot of different people, and we were able to hit the right people. And that's kind of how the word got out, was that paid ad media that we did and an investment in the trailer for the event. And that's really how that made that last event popping, you know?
Right. I remember we were doing the videos. We even did that for the group, some Getdown. One thing we had, I just wanted to bring up for the audience in terms of how those things worked really well, is we had the street team. So we had a bunch of people
Oh, I forgot
whose
about that.
job it
Yeah.
was basically to go uh, sell tickets on our behalf, and then we would give them. I don't know. I forget what the amount was, but if this ticket was $10, we give them $3 of the ticket, and then we would keep 7. So basically, it's like almost like influencer marketing in person is how it worked out.
For real. Yeah, that's right. Because I remember our boy Raj was one of our best sellers because he just knew a
Shout
lot
out
of different
Raj.
people.
He would be a
Yeah,
bestseller for sure.
he had a cold mouthpiece and he was able to, really talk to people. The other part too was a marketing strategy, which was unintentional, but now that I think about it, it was genius on our part. Was we had extended the hours of the event. So before we were probably doing like 8 to 11, I think 8 to 12. We extended it to be a daytime thing, and I think we did from like 6 to 12. And so what that extension did is it allowed us to fit in more acts. And what we did is we fitted more live acts from the beginning of the night, and then we faded into DJ night. And so what that did is we gave more people an incentive to promote the event. More people were involved. The network spread. The word of mouth was larger. The social network reach was bigger because more people were involved. It's not always going to work for an event because some events might be too short or the format might not work. But for that particular one, it was the right thing at the right moment.
Right, especially if you can get people in at the beginning. It's always the hardest part, get their people at the beginning. So if you can get like the opening acts to bring their homies out, then it's going to fill out earlier in the night. Yeah, well, thanks for bringing me on. It kind of sparked my entire journey. I remember watching you help out, and I was like, man, I'm trying to come too. Shit.
Yeah.
And then I was able to do the group some Getdown, plan that with my brother Kyle, and you guys all came up for that, and that was super dope. Cool. Yeah. Well, I wanted to touch on you kind of mentioned it earlier, working for like a digital marketer for this, what was like a sleep apnea company. So I wanted to touch on that a bit because obviously, or not obvious for everybody, but we were pretty high performers in school. You were the student body president. I was a commissioner. So in college, we were kind of killing it. And then when you graduate, you get level set back to 0 and you ain't shit.
Pretty much.
You're out there trying to get a job, going to take whatever. So I remember you were kind of in this position where you're like, man, I can't really find much of something I'm looking for, especially being in Stockton. To me, it felt like you felt kind of stuck. So I'm wondering if you can describe what that moment in your life was like, and then how that led to looking for new opportunities, and then how that eventually led to Berkeley.
Yeah. So then, as you mentioned, we were really super involved on the on-campus activities at UOP. And because of that, I didn't really spend much time thinking about what happens after UOP. And I think it was a worthwhile investment. I learned a lot by doing that, but I think maybe in hindsight, I could have spent more time thinking about what happens after. But because I didn't, once graduation hit and, the dust settled, I realized like I didn't really have anything set up for after being in college. And so I took one of the first jobs I had available to myself, which was this company through actually who was then my dentist. He started this sleep apnea company, which essentially was trying to market medical devices to combat sleep apnea. I knew digital marketing because that was kind of my major's concentration was marketing and the business school. And so he brought me on, and it was a work from home job, which, then now is a pretty common thing. But back then
it was not a thing.
Not a thing. And not only that, we did not have very many good tools based upon it. I think I used GoToMeeting. Remember that?
No.
You don't remember that one?
Sounds terrible.
You probably recognize the logo if you saw it. But yeah, GoToMeeting was what we were using. Anyways, I had to work from home. My roommate at the time worked out of the house, so he was leaving every day. And I quickly did not like that. I was alone most of the day. I hated the job, and I could not see myself work this past a year. Like for real, it was bad.
Wait, so you're saying being alone all day working at home is not the business?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. Sorry, go ahead.
And I kind of got into a funk, to be real. I was kind of bummed out. I wasn't very motivated. What I noticed, though, I was spending way more time on not only learning how to DJ and get better at it, but these events that I was doing with Plural Music, the Getdowns. And I remember that one point I was working way more during the day on these events than I was my actual job. Thankfully, there was no one like monitoring me, so like I, didn't get in trouble from that. But it was very obvious that this is not what I was trying to do. The digital marketing for the company, and I was trying to do more of like this event production stuff. And that was kind of like a big wake up for me. I'm like, okay, I'm obviously doing this way more because I'm way more passionate about it. So let's try and figure out a way to do this. And I remember one day I was just literally on my computer in my room, and I shit you not, I just Googled top graduate business schools. And I think it was like the first two were like very not realistic ones. It was like I think it was like Juilliard, and then I think like Oxford. And I'm like, okay, I know for a fact I can't get into those because they're like performance-based schools, and I was not good at performance at any particular instrument at the time, unless they were going to let me do DJing, which probably now they would now, but then they were not. And the third one on the list was Berkeley College of Music. And so I looked that up, and it just so happens that Berkeley College of Music had just opened up a sister school in Valencia, Spain, that had a concentration, a master's program in music, global music business. And so I looked that up. I looked at what it needed to be entering it, and I applied. And now we're going to get to the leap of faith part I know you wanted to talk about. So at the same time, I wasn't still 100% that this was going to be something I wanted to do. So I hedged my bet. Throughout my time at UOP, I was involved a lot with student affairs and just how the internal kind of engine of a administrative building for a college university works. Kind of fell in love with it because I really liked being able to help my peers and people my age. And that was another career path I identified, like maybe this is a direction I could go. So while I applied to Berkeley College of Music, I also applied to the student affairs program, the graduate program at UOP. And being, as the president of the student body, I knew I had connections there that I knew like I could probably get a lot of information from the people who worked there to kind of put me in a good position to potentially get accepted to this student affairs program. So I ended up getting accepted to the student affairs program, and I get that notification way before I even hear back from Berkeley. I think the student affairs program told me like the middle of May, but Berkeley wasn't supposed to get me back to like the beginning of June. So I get the offer letter from University Pacific Student Affairs Graduate Program, and on there it says I have to reply by May 30th. I'm not supposed to hear back from Berkeley College of Music to like I think it's like June 6th or something like that. So I was sitting in my room on my computer looking at this offer letter and being like, shit, I kind of want to do this, but I really want to do this music business stuff way more. And it was literally a moment of truth. I was a big leap of faith moment because I was sitting there and I'm like, if I accept this, I have to pay like a fat deposit in. And like, if I don't go to school, I end up like losing that money. Mind you, we're fresh out college. We ain't really, I ain't really got it like that at the moment. And I'm not proud of this, but like in my mind, I was definitely like, okay, let me say, if I don't accept this at University Pacific, I felt like with my connections I had in the school, I could have maybe figured out a way to still get accepted after the fact. Mm-hmm. So I declined the offer letter to get into UOP's graduate program. And I pretty much rolled the dice on Berkeley. And I told myself, if I get accepted into Berkeley, I'm supposed to do music. That is supposed to be my career. And if I don't, then I will find a job doing digital marketing for like a tech company or something. So I rolled the dice, I declined it. And it was like a crazy ass moment for me. And then I think I ended up hearing back on June 4th. And I remember this particularly because my birthday is June 3rd. And me and my roommate went out the night before and, had a few drinks. And I remember waking up pretty late on the 4th, opening up my email, not feeling too great. And I saw the letter came in from Berkeley, and I got accepted. And I jumped out of bed and I started like screaming. I'm like, no fucking way, this fucking actually worked. And I got accepted. I got accepted to the school, and I'm like, damn, no way. And so like that's kind of how I ended up going to Berkeley. I accepted it. I started making my plans. I told my parents like, yo, I'm about to move to Spain. And then like, sure enough, a couple months later, come the end of July, I'm packing up my things in California and moving all the way to Valencia, Spain to attend the school.
Nice. Some things work out that way. Cool. So then once you're there, you're in like the music business program, obviously, and there's also like people who are masters of their craft in music.
Yeah, for sure.
What was it like working with people at that level in the industry on the music side? What did you learn from them?
I think for me, I mean, shout out to UOP and shout out to our program director of the music business school, Professor Keith Hatchett, because he really had me prepared. Like the classes were dumb hard at UOP. Like people think music business and they think it's just listening to music and like talking about marketing rollouts. Like, nah, he made that really intense research programs. And because of that, I ended up feeling like I was very well prepared compared to even the peers at Berkeley to, tackle a lot of the school assignments and everything. Mm-hmm. But really what Berkeley, my time there did was it kind of compounded my belief that you can make a career of this, because I was meeting people who were actually doing it. Because up until this point, I had never really met anyone who had a full-on career in music business. I'd only heard about things. I'd only read in magazines, Rolling Stones and Billboard about people who made a career. But not at Berkeley, they did a great job of every other week they were bringing in someone to talk to our business class from who had, respectable positions at a music company. I remember we talked to Benji Rogers, who at the time worked at Spotify. And so I'm like, oh, this is crazy. We talked to Rob Dickens, who, for those who don't know, Rob Dickens is very prolific A&R. He was one of the people who he was part of the team that found Adele. So I got to do some meetings and some in-class, sessions with these very prominent people. So what Berkeley really did was show me how to get there and what is the possibilities that are out there. Because the other part of it too is people don't realize in music business, there's a ton of things you can do. Ton of things. You can do things that are really close to the music creation process. You can do things that are very far from it, like royalty accounting, but there's a ton of positions you can do. And Berkeley kind of showed me that. And the other part too was just being constantly surrounded and talking about music business. Oftentimes I get students or even people who are trying to get into music business ask what to do. And one of my biggest, pieces of advice I always tell everyone is like, live and breathe it. If you want to be in music business, read about it every day. What I did was on my Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, I unfollowed everything that didn't have to do with music business. I followed my favorite artists, my favorite music labels, Billboard, Rolling Stone, Hits Daily Double, everything. And that's the only thing I consumed on my social media. And that's all I did. I read about it. I learned about it, all the trends that were happening at the time. Because I figured if I can at least know what's going on right now, I can have a conversation with pretty much anyone in the music business about what they're doing right now. And, my idea was like, if I know what's happening and I can have these conversations, then maybe that leads me to making an impression on this person, getting their contact info, and then maybe down the road, I can get a referral or even a job from just knowing what's going on in music business. And being at Berkeley, you're talking about music business all the time. You're talking about music in general all the time because, at Berkeley, Valencia was also performance and production school there. And that's kind of what really did it for me. It allowed me to be fully immersed in it and just really live, breathe, and just sleep music business.
Nice. That's kind of how it was super dope and plural when we had the HQ in Oakland. We're just all together all the time. So to bring it back to a lesson for DJs, I think it's talks to the importance of having other DJ friends. That if you don't have a DJ group chat, you got to find one. That way you can always be talking shop, talking about the latest hardware, latest software, what's hot in the club, what's not, things like that. So I think that's a cool lesson that DJs can take specifically. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Did you have like a favorites before we move on from to kind of the DJ time you had in Spain? Any favorite people that came to speak? Anyone that stands out to you?
Yeah, I do. I remember one in particular. He was really dynamic. Marty Frascagna, who is a prominent music business lawyer, entertainment lawyer. He came through, and he was very relatable because he was younger. He was a lot more hip. Rob Dickens was hella old, so like some of his takes were like a little outdated. Benji Roger was cool because he worked at Spotify, so he kind of had that allure there. But like Marty understood how to talk to us, and he stood out to me because he kept it super real. Like he talked very candid about how music business works and how stuff worked. And he also introduced us some really cool shit before it popped off. Like he was representing 21 Pilots like 3 years before they blew up crazy. He told us about Haley and Chloe Bailey before anyone even knew who they were. When they were like 13, 14, he's like, watch, these 2 girls got co-signed by Beyonce. They're going to blow up. And, he was right. They ended up blowing up. So like Marty for sure was one of the people who really stood out to me. Yeah, he was definitely one of them.
Nice. Okay, so while you're in Spain, you're also, being a DJ, you brought it over there. Can you talk a little bit about how you were able to get your first DJ gigs out in Spain?
Yeah, that was definitely something that was quite a tall task when I first got there. Like I came in very much branding myself as a DJ centered kind of person. So like that's why I want to DJ and everything like that. And because of that, I actually met a couple other people who also DJ. There was like 2 or 3. One of my roommates actually was a DJ, and I kind of like hit it off with him. And through him, I was introduced to my other friend, Kareem, aka Tony Clark. Shout out Tony Clark, out in Boston and the East Coast. He was someone that was already he was actually already there and knew a lot of people at Berkeley. So he had already made connections in Valencia, Spain. And so through my friendship, through my roommate Ian and then Tony, we ended up getting connected to one of the promoters who was pretty prominent. His name was JC. He was the head of this really popular. It was a very popular club in Spain. It's called Erasmus, which is essentially means that it was a club catered to all the foreign exchange students, which foreign exchange students at that time meant people from the UK and the US. Mm-hmm. So he was the head of this club called Rumbo 144, and they were known for their Wednesday parties. So all the Erasmus parties, so all the exchange student parties happen on Wednesday nights in Spain. And so, I got introduced to JC. I went to a couple of events, showed face there at the events supporting my boy Tony, who was already getting, booked there. And then eventually we had a day where like we showed up enough and talked to JC enough. He gave us a tryout. So one day we came into the club, and it was not during opening hours, and we just kind of like spun 15-minute sets for him. And he's like, all right, your first date's going to be such and such. Then from then I started to get introduced to even more people as I was more around the club scene. Got introduced to another boy, my other boy named, I think his name was Oscar. He started showing me to some other people. And then from there, kind of just all snowballed. So really you just need kind of like an entry point. For me, it was my boy who's already been in Valencia, Spain. So he knew a couple people. He was able to introduce me. But really, I also came correct. I didn't come like not knowing what they were looking for to spin. I'd gone a couple times to the club. I knew what they were looking for. And I know my skills were good enough to be able to carry me to a point where I was able to get a gig. That also, and I was able to speak their language. Like literally, I spoke Spanish. I think that probably helped me a lot. So like, sure. I understood what the crowd wanted. And I think a big part for me too was there's a few DJs from my squad that couldn't make the cut because they only knew one genre. One of the benefits that I had having grown up in Stockton and like all the different, backgrounds that lived there is like I learned how to DJ pretty much every genre from the jump. So I wasn't a one-trick DJ. Like I didn't just do house. I didn't do just hip hop. I was able to spin everything. And I think that helped a lot because like whatever JC wanted me to spin, because every night was themed. Whatever he wanted me to spin, I was able to spin. And it was never like an issue for me.
Right. Nice. Well, I like how you brought up, pulling up to the club first. I talked about that a couple of times in the podcast. Number one rule of networking and doing anything as a DJ, got to show up. So whether it's you want to connect with the DJ or want to get booked at a venue, show up to the venue before you ask for anything. Just go out. Not that hard. Go party. But nice. That's cool. So also in Spain, we went on a trip to Ibiza. How did we got connected with that through Joe, right? What was the play there?
Yeah, so we were pretty I would say we're pretty fortunate because our homie and business partner on Plur Music had during his time in college, he actually did a foreign exchange program where he went from the U.S. to Spain for I think it was a whole semester. And while he was out there, Joe was actually one of the people who helped me learn how to spin vinyl. And shout out Joe Q, aka Selecta Cure. Um, he had already met a couple people out there, and one of the people he met out there was this group that had this like it was like I mean, what would you call this? It was
Like a spring break company.
destination. It was like a destination trip company, and what they did is they did spring break trips to Ibiza for all the exchange students. So they would organize everything from where you needed to meet to tickets to locking in venues where you would go and party at and like hotels where you'd stay at. And so they had done all this stuff and Joe had spun for them. And if you guys don't know Kier, he's an excellent DJ. So like he quickly impressed them. And so when Joe came back and he knew I was going over there, he had connected me with these people. And him knowing that he had confidence in my DJ, but he introduced me to them and I connected with them and they were like, yo, we need a DJ to come for our trip. Someone that can actually know what the Americans want to spin. And I'm like, yo, I'm your guy. And they ended up booking me for this trip. And so I ended up being able to go to this Ibiza trip where I was kind of like the resident DJ for this traveling company. And I was able to spin at these different locations that we were at. And it worked out really well. I mean, through that, I got a lot of connections in that. And that's how we ended up getting connected to this group, which, if you fast forward a little bit, we ended up coming back to Spain and did a whole tour with them in Ibiza.
Nice. Yeah, that was super fun. It turned into like a little family. I also just remember going to like driving in this van to like through the cuts of Ibiza to like this rich dude's house. All like the celebrities go to party and there's this guy just has this crazy sound system set up in there that's like off market. And I was like, that's crazy. Nice. Well, yeah, make connections. I think that's the whole point there is no matter where you go, always make friends, introduce your friends to those friends, and then good things happen.
And you also got to ask too, because like, had I not asked, I might have never got the opportunity. Because closed mouths don't get fed. So you got to ask. You got to be willing to swallow your pride and not be too proud to ask for either a connection or a favor or just even tips.
Right, for sure.
All right.
Cool. Well, I want to change gears a bit, and I'm trying
to
lead for those not watching on YouTube. We got Alan's dog.
My dog
trying to play fetch.
Here, hold up. Give me a second here. Let her come out here.
Cool. Yeah. So post Berkeley, I think you had a bit of a situation similar to post regular college, where like you're like, all right, I graduated with this music business degree. Now I got to get a job in music, but then it was a little bit more difficult. So can you describe the first couple of jobs that you had to take post college and what that felt like? Especially post spending all this money and energy, getting this degree in music, and then what took place after that?
Yeah, I came back from Spain, and like when you're gone from the U.S., especially when you come back and live in the Bay Area, which I always say it's akin to living in the future. You've been out the game for a minute. Even 6 months in the Bay Area, things move rapidly. So when I came back, I didn't know nobody. Hella companies already sprung up. I didn't know what I was gonna do, and I was very stubborn. I didn't want to move down to LA. I knew LA is the mecca of music business. I didn't want to go down there. Throughout my life, I didn't have the greatest experiences down there, so I'm not really trying to do all that. I wanted to live in the Bay Area, and then we had just opened up the studio in Oakland for Plo Music, so I knew I really wanted to be adjacent to that, or at least close. And it was tough. I remember the first 3 months, I think I was, riding the couch at the studio and just trying to figure out a job or trying to make the DJ thing happen as a full-time thing. I couldn't do it. It might have been a couple of different factors. I didn't have many resources financially to make it work for me to be able to like try and really pursue the DJ thing. It was also difficult because I didn't have very much support from my family at the time. they didn't really believe that this angle of music business still was very viable, despite me having just gone to Spain to do it. They still weren't 100% confident about it. And it was just tough in the Bay Area. The scene is not exponentially big like it is in LA, where you can just, throw a rock and you hit someone who works in business. It's the Bay, you really got to seek it. And so I was having a hard time. Tried doing it for a couple months, and eventually, the bills came knocking. I had to pay some bills, specifically student loans. So at that point, I had to swallow my pride. And you had been working at Square for a while there now, and you told me like it's a good opportunity, it pays well, and it could lead to something bigger. So I applied, and actually before that, I actually tried to work at Apple retail, and I tried doing
that's
that.
What I was trying to bring up.
Yeah, I went for it because at that point I got desperate. I needed to pay bills. Like these student loan, Sally Mae was starting to knock me like, "Yo, this shit is due. Like it's time to pay the toll." And so I tried to do a month of working at Apple retail. That month ended up falling of the training ended up falling at the same time we had the Ibiza tour back in Spain. So I remember when we went, I had just applied right before we left. We went to the Ibiza tour, and I ended up getting the offer letter to work at Square.
Oh, that's right.
At
Yeah.
the customer service while we're in Ibiza. So we're not in Ibiza, while we were actually in Valencia. And that was sick because I like locked that in, and I was like, "Yeah, buddy, we're out of here now." And so like it was cool because I knew I had a job when I came back. So yeah, I ended up working at Square customer service with you, and it sucked. That job was terrible. I did not like that job. I mean, from a functional day-to-day thing, it wasn't great. Had good benefits. They fed us. The pay wasn't bad. Opportunity was also good, but I had to swallow my pride. I had to get my chips up in order to do what I really wanted to do. So that's kind of what I did. I swallowed it. I by day worked at Square, by night worked on the company and the DJ thing.
Cool. And then what led to the job at Empire?
So what led to the job at Empire was the fact that I continued to stay active in music. So even though I didn't work on the daily about it, we were running our events company. We were trying to do events, club gigs, and all that. We were still DJing very actively then, and it kind of kept my chops up. Still reading about music business every day. I told people at Square we try to do music stuff, invited them out to. And I kept in contact with my program director at Berkeley College of Music in Valencia, Spain. And so he saw that, on social media, you portray what you want people to see. So the only thing I was portraying on my socials was us DJing and doing stuff for Flow Music. It wasn't showing me grinding it out at Square and customer service. Calls. So, my program director saw I was still active. One day he was doing a field trip where he was bringing students from the Valencia program in Spain to the West Coast to talk to people who are in music business or tech companies. And he hit me up one day on Facebook Messenger, and he's like, "Yo, I'm coming out here to Oakland. There's like this little meetup at what's called the Zoo Lab here in Oakland. It's like the studio. I don't even know if it's still open." And he's like, "Yo, there's someone I want you to meet. I know you've been looking for a job out here in music business. Meet up with them, and you can connect and just, have another connection out there." So I'm like, "All right, bet." So I pulled up to this event, not knowing what to expect. I get introduced to this guy named Joey, who ends up being the attorney for Empire. So Empire at the time was a very small independent distributor, and there's not much known around Empire because they're pretty early, pretty mysterious. And my program director introduces me to Joey, this lawyer, and he starts talking to me about this position out of nowhere. Like he's pitching me a job. And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And at the end of the conversation, he's like, "So does that sound like something you'd be interested in?" And I'm like, "Whoa, it's crazy." Yeah, I guess. He's like, "Yeah, send me your resume." And I remember it was pretty wild. I don't know if you remember this, but I remember I called y'all and I left like a voice message, I think on iMessage. I'm like, "Yo, this dude just offered me like a job." And I did not expect that. I'm like, "This is crazy." And I messaged the group chat about that, and I was like, "This is crazy." And I think you guys might have brushed it off because it was like one of those things like, "Oh yeah, bro, sure you did." Mm-hmm. So I sent them in my resume, and lo and behold, a month later, I get a call from the CEO of Empire's assistant telling me he wants to do a call with me in a meeting. And I'm like, yo, whoa, this is crazy, no way. And I'm at work, like trying not to be suspicious of me taking a call for another job while I'm out on the job. And I'm like,
what's your adherence?
yeah, exactly. And I take the interview, and I do it a day where I can actually make it work. And I go take the interview. It's real mysterious. They start asking me about things that I'm doing. And now here's the crutch part where I think is really important for people to understand, who are trying to get into the music business that don't necessarily work there every day. While I was working at Square, remember I was telling you we were doing everything we were doing at Plural Music. We were trying to run the studio. We were trying to do our own events. We started to start our own little boutique label. All of those things, even though we weren't doing that at a high professional level, I was gaining experience on how this works. I was forming an opinion of what is my perspective on the music business. And it kind of prepared me for that interview with the CEO of Empire. His name is Ghazi, for those who are unfamiliar. And when I was in that interview, he started asking me questions about what I do with the company. And I told him about this. And I'm pretty sure this is where I got the job, was this. He asked me about, what do I think of record labels and current deals? And I told him, we had learned at UOP and at Berkeley about 360 deals, and I never thought that was fair. It never made sense to me. So I talked to him like, yo, these deals are crazy. I think they take too much. It makes no sense to me that an artist should make less for their art than the label who's actually working it. They didn't even make it. And then I told them about what we were doing at Plural, because remember we had done those deals where we were doing 50-50 share on everything, whether it be streaming revenue and copyright ownership. And I told him about the deals we were doing at Plum Music. And I think really that part really kind of like captured him, because that's exactly what Empire was pioneering at the time. Mm-hmm. They were doing non-exclusive distribution deals and label services deals that they were never taking more than 50% on any deals they were doing with artists. And so when I told him that, I think like he realized like, oh, that aligns exactly what we're doing. He gets it. He understands the spirit of what we're trying to do here. And I'm pretty sure that obviously with my Berkeley degree and my UOP degree, he felt confident enough to offer me the job. So like a month and a half later, I get a call. He offered me the position, and he's like, yo, name your price. And I had to go ahead and do research and kind of negotiate with him for a salary for the position, and, locked it in. And the rest is kind of history.
I remember you got the offer letter while we were on a vacation in Hawaii. And I was like both happy for you and also like kind of annoyed, because I was like, we're not gonna work together anymore. But I knew it was the right thing. So what was the like position that they hired for you?
We lived together. So like if 24/7 wasn't enough for you. Yeah, 24/7 wasn't enough for you.
So what was the position that you got hired for? I think it was different than, when you got there, you put in the work and it kind of quickly changed into the product manager, higher level, right?
Yeah. So I originally got hired to do, so I speak Spanish natively, pretty fluently, and grew up around Latin music all my life. So I got hired to be essentially the label manager for all our Spanish labels that we worked with. Then Empire was very much a distributor aggregator. So all their the whole business plan and like business model was get as much content as we can from all these different types of music and pretty much make profit off to running that. And so essentially what my job was, I was supposed to answer all the messages and emails and set up releases for all the Spanish speaking labels. No one in the office at the time spoke Spanish. So I ended up being the guy who was supposed to be doing that. I got hired in May 15th was actually my start day. I remember this, May 15th, 2017. That was about 15 days after the release of a very significant song, the original version of this very significant song. And then come the top of June, a remix of this very significant song came out. And that song was the Justin Bieber remix of Despacito. And obviously, if anyone was not living under a rock or in a cave and has heard this song blew up. It became one of the biggest songs of all time. And not only was it the biggest song of all time, it ended up becoming the biggest Spanish speaking song of all time. And this, what it essentially did is it turned the Latin music market from being this niche, it's whatever, it's cute, La Macarena, yeah, to being this viable model of like, yo, you can make money off this shit. Because Despacito was #1 on the US charts. It was beating songs by Drake, Lil Wayne, Nicki Minaj, the biggest artist at the time.
Right.
And everyone kind of then at that point realized like, oh snap, like this is something that could become worth our investment. And so what ended up happening when at Empire we saw this, everyone kind of turned to me and be like,
Where's the
yo, let's invest way more into this Latin shit. And so they tasked me with starting looking for artists to sign, and I became kind of an A&R first, and starting to look for artists to sign onto Empire that were in the Latin game. And then from there, it evolved to me not only being the A&R, but also being the product manager who was bringing the signed projects to market and marketing them, and rollouts and everything like that. So that's really kind of evolved. And that happened just very quickly. That happened in like a month of Despacito hitting the top of the charts. At that point, I was looking at like Bad Bunny, Anuel, Faruko, before these dudes were even signed anywhere, trying to reach out to them and get them signed on to Empire.
You missed on Bad Bunny, huh?
Bro, we missed on Bad Bunny, but everyone missed on Bad Bunny.
Cool. So yeah, if you could maybe describe what you do, like what is the role of a product manager at Empire, and like what are the key well, yeah, let's just start there, then we'll kind of dive into some things I think that DJs and any potential artists that are listening could pick up on.
Yeah, so product manager job at most labels will it looks something like this. I mean, it'll be called a couple of different titles. The titles aren't that different, but a product manager at Empire essentially takes the finished product from the studio of the music and brings it to the marketplace in the most successful way possible. So my job is to essentially be the quarterback of all the different people and like entities that need to touch the music in order to get it to iTunes and Apple Music and Spotify in a successful way. So back when we had physical CDs, a product manager essentially was the one who sent the music to the manufacturing company to make it into discs. They then got those discs and they try to pitch it to Rasputin or Tower Records to put it at the front of the store so you can get more sales and drive it. That obviously changes a little bit now when everything becomes digitized with digital downloads and streaming. So my job was to essentially get the music, get it uploaded to the system, make sure the distribution team is up distributing it in the proper way, and getting the music pitched and marketed in a successful way. So whether it be coming up with creative rollouts, making sure that every platform that has digital music is aware that this is coming, letting them know why they should care about it, and just making sure all these moving parts work well. If we're going to create digital ads, getting the graphic designer, giving him direction of what's going to be created off the cover art of the song. If we're talking about making a music video, coordinating the music video production of that particular single. If we need to get a remix done, reaching out to whoever's doing A&R, at the time it was me still, and trying to figure out, who's going to be what, doing what, and just kind of getting all these moving parts and put together so that we can reach this end goal of release day. That's what a product manager does.
Man, I completely didn't put it together that product managers would be like pitching Tower Records and like managing the physical creation of the music. That's funny.
That's back in the day. We don't do that as much anymore, but yeah.
Right. So, okay, you also do some jobs as an A&R, and for any aspiring artists or DJs who, make music or trying to make music out there, what are successful ways to pitch music to people? And then what are some things that are like red flags and things you shouldn't do when you're pitching A&Rs at labels?
Yeah, so definitely, I think it's easier to start with the things not to do, for me at least. I've been at this for 5 years now, so I've seen everything under the sun. The worst thing you can do is this is the second one. The second worst thing you can do is send me a DM with only the link to your YouTube video, no context. That doesn't do anything. That doesn't tell me anything who you are, what you're doing, why I should care about this particular project. The worst thing you can do is send me a pitch in a DM or an email or however have you, even in like a setting of like the restaurant, and then feel entitled to me having to give you some sort of response or even sign you. And you'll be surprised how many artists feel they are entitled to not only my time, but also my resources and, my connections. So the worst thing you can do as an artist is feel entitled to the A&R's time and that they should sign you because you think you're super dope. 99 times out of 100, most aspiring artists don't have the things they need to warrant an A&R getting them really excited to get signed, because they're just not aware. They think that the music is the only thing that needs to be dope. And even then they might not have enough people around them telling them, like, is this really objectively dope or not? So that's probably the worst thing, is to have that entitlement. If an AR tells you no, not right now, or is like unable to answer, you need to cordially take that on the chin and keep it pushing. The worst thing you could do is be like, oh, you don't know what you're missing out. You're an idiot. I'm going to become the best, next biggest thing. Yeah. So, bro, we probably seen more visions than you have. So, like, chill out. Now, a good pitch. What's a good pitch? A good pitch would be like someone hitting me up with an email or hitting me on DM, being like, hey, my name is so-and-so. I come from here. I make this type of music. I think I can become this type of person. I've done this, and this thing up to this point in my career. These are linked to my EPK or my one sheet. Let me know what you think. If you're interested, I'd love to hear back from you. What that does is you're defining who you are. You're telling me why I should care. You're giving me resources to be able to quickly look at what you do instead of me having to go and search for it. You're giving me context of why it is your art is relevant. And then you're allowing me to become the person to decide, do I pursue this more or not? And you're being cordial about it. Being nice and cordial in the music industry goes a super long ways. And it's an unfortunate part, because there's a lot of people who are not that in the music industry. So, like, if you just do that alone, you'll stand out. Nice. Just from that alone. And again, take it on the chin. If they tell you no, not right now, then no, not right now. Use that as motivation to maybe up your game. If I was an artist, instead of being like, oh, okay, thank you for your time, or being upset about it, I would follow up with questions like, okay, what do you normally look for an artist that you'd normally sign? Use that opportunity to have a dialogue with someone who has something that you may want from them, and learn about what's going to take for you to maybe up your game, up your music, up your marketing, to get you to a point where you do get signed.
Nice. Okay, that makes a ton of sense. So what can DJs learn from artists and the marketing process for music, and maybe vice versa?
I mean, I don't think there's a distinction between artists and DJs. I mean, I always think that a DJ is an artist. It's just in a different way, right?
Yeah.
But, my mindset as an A&R and working at Empire is always DJ centered. So I'm always thinking, like, can you spin this track? How could this play in the club? What playlist kind of plays would this go into? But I think that another part too is DJs can learn from recording artists more about, like, what is the message or what is the feeling behind a song. I think as a DJ, I probably sometimes write off some music too quickly because I'm listening to it in my headphones and only thinking of, like, how could I quickly spin this in the club or something like that. But some tracks don't always need to have that context. It's only one setting that music works in. Music works in multiple settings. So as a DJ, you also want to remember that there's multiple settings for a track's purpose. An artist sometimes will think of a song, maybe they made this song as being the wedding walkout song. As a DJ who spins at clubs all the time, I might not immediately think of that. So I might not understand the value of that song. The other part too is understanding, like, a regional context of a song. If I'm a DJ from New York and I get pitched someone like Nef the Pharaoh, I may not understand that from the jump because I don't understand where Nef the Pharaoh comes from. I'm New York. If I play something from Nef, it might not respond there. But go to a Bay Area club, go to Oakland, playing at Somar, and you play Nef the Pharaoh. That's just going to have the whole club lit. So understanding context of where the music's coming from is also important. And to do that, you need to understand who the artist is and what their significance is of where they're from. Most artists that have reached to a point where they have their music in a DJ pool have a pretty good enough reach. And then another one that's important that not only applies to DJs but also A&Rs, I think, is, like, never completely write off an artist. Always be respectful of artists. Even if you think they're not very good, never write anyone off where you're big time in them, where you're telling them, like, I'm not, this guy isn't even worth my attention. Like, never think that. As soon as you think that, you're going to miss on the next DaBaby. You're going to miss on the next Megan Thee Stallion. You're going to miss on the next Cardi B, because all those artists at one point were neglected by an entire industry.
Right.
And maybe because at that point their shit was not at a good enough par, but never write anyone off like that. That's the number one killer of any opportunity that will come down the road. I have never had I haven't had that personally happen to me where like someone really big blows up, but I've had opportunities where like, I probably could have done a little bit better effort to keep that relationship going with this artist who later blew up. So like never write anyone off simply because you don't see them as big enough yet. Be respectful, thank them for like considering you to even consider their music, and keep it pushing. You ain't got to become best friends with them, but yeah, you also don't got to be, you ain't got to be a dick to them.
Right. Cool. All right. Well, before we jump into kind of the ending Selecta Style section here, any pro tips from like the Empire or just experience that you think, the working DJ or even like a producer DJ could take away?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think as DJs, you have a very unique and very underrated position in the music industry. Yes, playlists help break artists. MTV helps break artists. Radio helps break artists. But the reality is, tracks stick around and become culturally significant because of DJ spinning them, whether it be at parties, whether it be at clubs. Recognizing where your position is in that whole kind of like machine, where your cog is in the machine of the music industry, is really important as a DJ. Understand you have value. If anyone writes you off just because you're a DJ and you don't necessarily produce, or maybe you don't record, brush that off the side, because you do have value. You're an important piece of what this industry does. The other part too is, try and meet as many people as you can, as many artists as you can. Keep in mind that any artist anytime can end up becoming the next big thing. And just keep relationships open. If an artist invites you out to the release party, maybe it's not someone you particularly, too fond of, or you don't listen to their stuff every day. If you can, pull up. It's not going to hurt you to show up an hour and a half of your time, because who knows what's going to end up happening at that party. You might meet the artist that's super dope, and that might put you on to their next release party. You might go there and then see that they're only playing off Spotify on the speakers, and you might be like, hey, next time, I don't know, artist X, let me spin, or like, I'll spin for you. There's a big opportunity of being adjacent to the people who are creating the art that we spin. And then the other part too, as DJs, is I would encourage them to put their own spin to music. I think our boy Cure does a good job of this. He's making his own edits, his own flips. They're not like transcendent remixes that are going to change the outlook of a song, but what it does is it gives you your own flavor to it and lets you bring in your own kind of perspective onto the music that you're spinning all the time. And I think that's also important too. Invest some time on learning how to do a flip, even if it's simple as getting an instrumental and putting a different acapella on it. I think that'll go a long ways as well. And then the other part too is coming up with creative ways to do things. What I see some DJs do that's really cool and creative is, if your favorite artist, J. Cole, puts out a project and you really mess with that album, you're like, yo, this is super dope. Make a mix of it. Mix of the whole album. Put that up on SoundCloud and send it to J. Cole and see what he says. I don't know. That kind of stuff is really cool, and that could end up opening a door for you. But I think just kind of putting yourself out there is really important when it comes to the DJ thing. You can't just be only thinking about your one club gig. You can't just be at home and only doing Instagram stuff. You got to be out in the trenches, really working it.
For sure. Yeah, one thing you said that I'm kind of curious on your opinion of, I think is a really cool idea. It hasn't really culminated yet, but this concept of like, there's playlisting that Spotify's and the titles put out. They're like the curated whatever it is. I feel like it'd be a really cool thing in addition to doing like DJ mixes that you put up on SoundCloud. But if DJs could eventually kind of treat streaming platforms as social media in a way where like they could curate playlists of their own vibe, and then market those as like a thing that they're keeping up on, I think that could be a cool thing that could take place in the future if there's like a public profile aspect of the streaming platform. So kind of curious what you think about that, and from your experience, especially because you work really hard to get your songs on the major platform playlist. But do you think that there's a space for like kind of what's the word, like a community grown playlists in that way, if they could be grown?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the most underutilized things that maybe even myself as a DJ probably don't do enough is creating your own list. I mean, in today's world, there's so much music. I think between Apple Music and Spotify, they get about 500,000 music releases a week. Imagine that. There's 500,000 tracks being released a week globally, brand new. That's way too much music for any one human being or even one company to parse through.
Right.
So as a DJ, not only do we spin music in live settings, but like you said, you can create your own taste and your own playlists that are, curated to whatever you want it to be, whether it be a funk playlist, a disco house playlist, whatever, and do that. I think it's a good way to also stand out. There's a couple of people that do it. That's really, really cool about it. They create their own playlist, they market it, they brand their playlist. Maybe you do a party around this particular playlist brand. That's a cool way to kind of stand out and kind of leave your own imprint in the community, because there are people, and especially here in Oakland, I think it's DJ Shellheart for a while. She had done that so much enough that Apple tapped her to be a guest curator for one of their playlists on the Bay Area before. So like these, become, as DJs, we're tastemakers. So becoming known as that, as a prolific tastemaker, it can be beneficial, not just because you get booked for gigs, but like you can end up getting a job at fucking Spotify managing a playlist, or
Right.
a guest curator for I don't know, the Zumba, making the next Zumba playlist or something like that.
Yeah.
It's worth investing into that as well if you're trying to diversify how you do things as a DJ, not just only being about DJ mixes or edits.
Right. Especially if you're trying to get a corporate gig or something, you want to give them your taste or whatever, you could be like, check out my playlist. But all right, cool. Glad to know that's a good idea. I'm still figuring out the best way to do it myself, but hopefully the platforms will come out with some easier tools for us to make that happen. All right, so I want to jump into kind of the final section here I do on every podcast called the Selecta Style. We talk about music taste and then library organization, one of my favorite topics to talk about. So on the music taste side, how would you describe yourself, or how would you describe your DJ style? And then secondly, what do you listen to when no one is listening?
I always describe my style as a mix of, now it's probably a mix of house, Latin, and hip hop, which to a lot of people may not make sense, but when you listen to it, it does make sense because a lot of these beats kind of work together. I'm definitely a person who does a lot of extreme tempo changes. I tend to do that a lot. I'll go from 125 to 135 down to 70 to even 86 or something like that. Pretty easy. I try and find very creative ways to do those tempo changes to make people go, like aha moments. And I think my main thing is I really like to do is find music that sounds familiar, but is new to the person. So for example, there's a song by Mike Towers, this reggaeton artist from Puerto Rico. It's called Girl. It used a sample from Diddy, from Bad Boys Records, and it's very recognizable. It's I Need Your Love. Oh, I Need a Girl. I Need Your Girl sample, and he changes it. He used that first kind of very iconic kind of part melody of the song, and he switches it to a reggaeton beat. So I like to get really noticeable or recognizable sounds, and then flip it and switch it to something that people haven't heard it in that sense. So whether it be a reggaeton version of 21 Questions, or maybe it's the trap version of, I don't know, Rolling in the Deep by Adele. I've never done that, but I'm spitballing here. But doing stuff like that is kind of what I really like to do, is bringing familiar sounds but giving them a new spin. That's probably my taste. And then that kind of leads me to how I organize my libraries. When I create show playlists or something like that, I tend to spend an hour or two just freestyling a set with the playlist I made for that particular show and seeing what ends up fitting. And what I try and do is I try and find triplets of songs, 3 songs that work well together, and figuring out how those 3 songs best can be mixed together. And then I create my playlist with those triplets. So if I know song A, B, and C work well together, that's 3 songs that I know will be in that playlist. So anytime I'm at the club and it seems to be like the appropriate time to whip out song A, B, or C, I know I can mix into immediately 2 or 3 songs after that. And that's kind of how I build it. And what it does is it also lets you be able to practice, but be prepared for any spontaneous situations. So like if you practice that triplet enough, it's going to become second nature to you. So you can whip it out anytime in the middle of any set. So essentially you end up like building your sets through triplets. And so like, instead of having to spending a lot of time with Serato face trying to find like, what's the next song? You already know at least the next 2 songs after that one song that has a triplet attached to it. So you can already get into that vibe. That's kind of how I build my playlist. And then I build everything by vibes. I don't do the BPM stuff at all, really at all. Everything is vibes. So like I have playlists called like funk vibes or funk house. I have ones that are like fun house for kids. I have stuff that it's like, I don't know, like.
Want to give some context to that? Why you have a fun house?
Oh yeah. Kids? Oh, fun house for kids. I had to like DJ this like kid music festival in Spain. So I had to like make sure I get it. Friendly,
all the kid vibes,
parent friendly music. Yeah. Like I had like remixes of like under the sea type shit. And then I do like, I don't know, like I'll name things after clubs because I know clubs have specific vibes. I'll be like Hawthorne opener, or I'll do like opener hip hop heavy or opener Latin heavy, stuff like that. That's kind of how I organize my library. So in my place, you'll see a medley of different genres, genres and BPMs, unless it's a genre specific playlist, then you tend to see a lot of the same BPMs. But yeah, I do everything by vibes, which I know doesn't work for everyone because some people like to be a little bit more technical and like go like, I need something at 108 to 110 right now. I don't really operate that way. I go by vibes and by sound.
Yeah, I feel you. I do some like location. I have an SF and then SD, and then in there like the VARs I play, then like the specific dates they'll be playing. That's where I'll just dump all my new stuff that I want to like rinse out, and then I can always go back to have like those venues playlists, and then I kind of have like a generic bar, like hip hop, house, whatever vibe. So that's kind of the vibe I've been doing right now, but I'm always trying to change and update based on what I talk to people about. Cool, man. Well, thank you again so much for coming on. Soul7 here again, once again on the business of DJing. Where can people find you? Where should they follow you? What are you working on that you want to let people know about?
Yeah, I mean, you guys can find me on all social media. It's Soul7 Beats, pretty much on everywhere but SoundCloud. It's the Soul7 Music. The SoundCloud strikes took down my Soul7 Beats channel, but you can find my music on SoundCloud. I'm on Mixcloud. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Audius. Definitely check out Audius. I put exclusive shit on Audius all the time. And if you really want to know what's coming up for me, I'm working on a new mixtape. It's going to be kind of like Latin house centered. Got really inspired on a trip to Puerto Rico. So that'll be coming within the next month. Ready for, the summer to come through. And then, last but not least, I'm working on a SoundCloud curator page. It's actually going to have a handful of playlists that people can go in and tap in. It's going to be called Crate Gems. So if you want to get an early taste of it, you can find it on SoundCloud. It's called Crate Gems. So CRATE, then Gems, and check that out. You can get a little taste of what I like.
Cool. Yeah, we'll throw it in the show notes as well. All right, bro. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Love you. And we'll chat again soon.